Hello, hello, and welcome back to Lovely. Happy Friday. I hope wherever you are today, whether it is a partner, your friends, or yourself, I hope you're choosing love in whatever way feels good for you today. Guys, today is a really special episode for our lovely family because this podcast officially turns one. We started this journey last year on Valentine's Day, and it has been a year of conversations, lots of voice notes that turned into episodes, lots of ideas that kind of started in my head and somehow made their way into your ears. And, there's a whole team behind Lovely. So when we started Lovely last year, and when I started hosting it, I don't think I had like a grand outcome in mind. I didn't start hosting this podcast because I had all the answers or because my life had magically figured itself out. If anything, I started it because I was very curious and I was open to learning about people and curious about relationships and about the stories that we tell ourselves when we're dating. And I think especially from my own experience as a woman, and also surrounded by women and people who are thoughtful and ambitious and emotionally aware, also navigating identity, culture, and expectation all at once. It can get complex, it can get nuanced, but it also is very rewarding in dating. So I think over the last year, we've been kind of navigating all of that and talking about those topics. And I think what's changed isn't that I suddenly cracked the code on love or dating. I mean, I started this single last year. I'm still single. But I think what's changed is the way that I listen to myself and also other people's experiences. And I think this journey and podcast has become less about how to date and more about asking better questions about desire, values, power, about timing, and really thinking about what we want and what we actually need. And honestly, if I found anything this year, brace yourself, it's going to be cheesy. I think it's just a deeper relationship with myself. That's the reality of where I'm at, how I feel about this podcast. So for our 1-year anniversary, I knew I wanted to bring on someone whose work I genuinely admire. Today's guest is Talia Koren, someone who approaches dating with curiosity and honesty. I was having a little bit of a fangirl moment because I've been following her content at least for the last 2 years and definitely have tuned in to her podcast. You may have heard of it, called Dating Intentionally.
It's going to be really hard. Acceptance is a choice. It's saying, I'm deciding to focus on the good and make peace with the stuff I'm not as into about this person. And I know I'm going to thrive in this relationship because there's enough good for me here to enjoy it. That is the opposite of settling. Settling is knowing you want more and not giving yourself the opportunity by staying.
Talia is someone who doesn't just talk about dating theories and approaches, but actually gives you helpful advice, has a lot of guests that have different perspectives, and she's kind of tested it herself too in a very real, very human way. She had this dating experiment that she did back in the day. She went on 150 dates with 64 different people in 10 months and tracked her experiences. I'm sure she challenged a lot of popular advice and ultimately met her husband along the way. So Talia, welcome to Lovely. I'm so excited to have you here. How are you?
I'm so good. Thank you for the love. That was quite an introduction, and congratulations on 1 year. I loved everything you said about what the show has become to you and that you've learned to ask better questions, learning more about yourself. I think that's wonderful.
I'm really looking forward to this conversation. But before we kind of get into any of that, by the time this episode releases, it's going to be almost Valentine's Day. So are you a big fan of Valentine's Day and what are you doing for it?
I would say no. I'm not like, I'm indifferent. I'm just like, it's cool. It's there. It's fun to lean into it. So I tell my husband every year, I just want one of those really not great box of chocolate, like from CVS, just with a picture of like a puppy on it. That is what I want on Valentine's Day. And so he delivers. And what we're doing, we're actually going on a double date this year with our friends who are getting married. We're like, oh, we're free this night on Valentine's Day. They're like, we're free too. So we're just going to go to dinner. And then the night before, I'm actually going to a singles mixer with my friend who's single.
Ooh, how is it when you yourself aren't looking to date? You're being a good wing woman and you're going with your friends. So what's that experience like?
I mean, for me, as someone with a dating podcast, I see it as research. I'm excited to chat with single people, and I'm sure I'll wing woman her, and maybe I'll wing woman someone else. I can be everyone's wing woman.
I love it. Do you have any like success story amongst your group of friends that met their partner at a singles mixer?
Yeah. So actually, the person who runs this mixer, she actually met someone, like two friends came to her show and they like set her up with a single guy. And like that's how they met. So that's one example that comes to mind. And my dad actually met his longtime girlfriend at a speed dating event.
Very cool. So we are pro speed dating, pro single mixers.
I'm pro any way for you to meet people, whether it's apps, mixers, dog parks, run clubs. I don't care. Just go out there and meet people.
You just mentioned your dad and how he met his partner. And I think this is a good segue into talking about your connection to immigrant identity, because that's kind of where I like to start with all of my guests. So, curious to hear, what is your connection to it and how much do you think your values and your upbringing shaped how you dated and kind of what you prioritized as you were navigating it all?
Yes, happy to share this. So I'm half first generation, I guess. My dad immigrated to America from Israel in the 80s. And, he studied here. He did the whole thing, like got his master's degree and has done very well for himself. And he's just like a true, like hardworking person who, has made a great life for himself here. And my mom is first generation. Both of my grandparents immigrated from, I think, Israel and the UK. So that's kind of my backstory there. And in terms of how my upbringing has affected my dating life, I will say being Jewish. And I feel like growing up, my family, they're very social. And I think that is true for a lot of Middle Eastern cultures. There's always a lot of people around. And I love that. I felt like growing up, going to like a Jewish summer camp or like a youth group weekend, it was very encouraged for boys and girls to mingle and meet. The leaders of every youth group weekend I went to, their story was like, we met at one of these. So we hope you guys will like meet people. It was very interesting. That was the message I got growing up. It's just like, it's okay to flirt. It's okay to talk to people and make romantic connections from like a pretty young age.
Yeah, and that definitely shapes how you approach dating. Like, I feel like you're just more open, and I feel like you don't have to think about these other things like I had to think about sometimes. Like, dating was not encouraged in a Muslim household, right? Like, up until 25. And then they're like, wait, you haven't found someone? What's wrong with you?
How's that going to work? Yeah.
Did you marry into a Jewish family?
No, I personally am not. I don't practice religion. I feel very more like tied culturally. I don't practice myself, and my family wasn't super religious growing up. So no, my husband doesn't, but he's always like, I'll convert for you. He's always joking around, you're good.
Do you think there's less pressure to have that conversion conversation now? Because I feel like now a lot more, I don't know what your experience has been, but back in the day when I was dating someone outside of my race and culture, there was always this underlying tone of, oh, well, he's going to convert, right? But now I guess it's a little bit more acceptable if they don't convert because it's a bit more normalized.
I agree. I think it's also like geographical. I've lived in New York. I lived in the Bay Area. I've lived in Seattle. Like these are cities. And I just feel like religion was never really a big part of the conversation in my friends' lives and dating. But then the expectation to convert just doesn't seem to be a huge part of the conversation in my experience. But I'm sure in other parts of the country and other parts of the world, it's definitely very important.
I'm really curious and I would love to hear about the evolution of your dating journey from those summer camps up until meeting your husband? Like, is there anything that really sticks out?
Yeah, I mean, I think like I've always been boy crazy, right? That's something that I think my friends would say about me growing up, like very flirty, forward, even, in middle school and high school, probably too aggressive that you have to learn how to flirt properly so you don't scare people off. So I think I've always had a little bit of that like confidence and I'll just walk up to anyone and start talking to them because I just don't care if it doesn't work out. Like it's fine. By the time I got to like I want to do dating intentionally now era, right? When I was 29 to 30, like I had built up a lot of skills in being comfortable talking to men and being comfortable with saying no and knowing my boundaries. And like I had built up a lot of those skills and I'm really grateful for that because it did make dating easier for me.
Can I ask you where that confidence came from? Like, why were you so confident in being like, I can go and talk to anyone else, and I also don't care if it doesn't work out?
I think it's a very much a chicken egg situation where like growing up, I put myself out there and fell flat on my face so many times that I've just survived so much through awkwardness and rejection that it just doesn't affect me that much anymore. But to start, I mean, I think I've always been someone who really goes after what she wants. Like I just don't like I'm really independent. So even being married, it's hard sometimes because if I want something, I have to get my husband on board and I have to actually be a team player. And that's something that I'm working on. It's hard. Like I usually just go for things. But I think part of it is wired in and part of it is truly just repetition. But by the time I got to my experiment that you mentioned up top, which by the way, I didn't have a goal for that experiment. I wasn't like, I'm going to go on as many dates as possible. My goal was to stay single for a year while dating, which yes, it's possible, ladies, you can do that. Like you can get those reps in. And my goal was to put my needs first. So that was the journey that I was on. I'm like, I am going to center myself and center my needs in my dating journey. And I'm not going to settle for anyone who can't meet those needs. The other side of that, though, is that you stop dating when you find it. So it was on me to recognize those things in my husband and stop dating.
That is a very, very good point. And I feel like a lot of people in today's day and age are struggling with that. It's because the illusion of option keeps you going.
How old were you when you realized you were the son of a president?
I don't think anyone's ever asked me that before.
FX's Love Story. John F. Kennedy Jr. and Carolyn Bessette.
I didn't think I could love someone like this until you.
From executive producer Ryan Murphy.
It's not a question of if I want to spend the rest of my life with you. It's if I'm cut out to be Mrs. JFK Jr.
FX's Love Story. John F. Kennedy Jr. and Carolyn Bessette. Watch now on FX, Hulu, and Hulu on Disney Plus for bundle subscribers.
So earlier in my intro, I mentioned that you were starting to date intentionally, and we'll kind of clarify what it means to date intentionally from your viewpoint. But you started this journey and you went on 150 dates with 64 people in about 10 months, right? So first and foremost, what headspace were you in, and what does dating intentionally mean for you? And what was like the epiphany that you had that I'm going to go on this many dates and all of those things?
Yeah. So first of all, what dating intentionally means to me is you are aligning your actions with your desires. And I think this is, again, it can be applied to any part in life, whether you're looking for a job or you're trying to do something in your life. It's like thinking about the goal and really looking at yourself like, do I act in a way that is going to get me to that goal? Like if I'm trying to do a pull-up, am I practicing that? Which by the way, I still haven't gotten it, but I will. What that looks like in dating is like, am I saying no to situationships? Am I saying no to people who are really attractive, but they're not on the same page as me? Like they don't know what they want right now. Like that's what dating intentionally is. It's just even when you feel that really strong connection, when you discover information that confirms that they're not the right person for you for any reason, that means saying no, even if the attraction is very strong, even if you have this amazing intellectual connection with them that you haven't found in a while. That's what it means. It's hard. And the headspace I was in, I had gone out of a 6-year relationship. So I really felt determined to do it differently because I got into that relationship in my early 20s And it was like the opposite of dating intentionally. I was like, oh, he's hot. And that's it. That was kind of it. And then we were together for 6 years. And so I was like, okay, I need to do this differently. I want to be married and have a family. So I took a very different approach.
And what was your first date with your husband?
So our first date technically was like a video call because he location fished me in that he said he was in Seattle, but he wasn't. He was moving to Seattle. So he was like going to move there in a month. So we like matched when he was in the process of moving. And he already had a job and an apartment lined up. I wouldn't have said yes. And did a few of those and a few phone calls. Like we weren't texting constantly or in contact constantly. And then we had our first real date in person at a brewery in Seattle, which was one of my, I had a go-to date place. It was walkable from my house. That was just the place I suggested. We have been talking every day ever since. That was then we never stopped talking.
Did you tell other people that you were on this journey of dating a lot of people in a certain timeline? And like, were you managing expectations up front?
No, I mean, yes and no. I wasn't telling people everything I was doing because like I don't think that was any of their business. But I was saying my intentions of like, I'm looking for a relationship or I'm not. The first half of my journey, like that 10 months or even more than half, I wanted to be single for a year. That was so important for me because I had been with someone for 6 years and I just hadn't been single for very long in my life. I think being single is amazing, especially in your late 20s, early 30s when you have money and time and like, you know, and you're hot and like, it's just, you know, and it's amazing at any age. I really think, you know, so I wasn't rushing. So in that time, I was just saying, I'm not looking for anything serious. And then eventually I transitioned into like, okay, I'm ready for something serious. And I would tell people, but I wasn't like, I'm dating like a feral.
Yeah, because then they would have their own bias and then they would approach it differently. So I totally get that. Can you tell me about a specific date that stood out to you during that time? I guess apart from your current husband.
Actually, I did meet this guy around this. It was the same week I met my husband. Yeah, he was amazing. Like, he was really handsome and we had a great connection. Like, everything was really good. I love the way he treated me. There were really no issues. Our first date, like, we went to a brewery and then we walked around and he had lived in Seattle for a long time. So he actually showed me like a park that I had never been to. It was like the tiniest park I've ever seen, but it had a great view of the sunset. So that stood out to me. I ended up going out with him a few times and not continuing because he had just gotten out of a 10-year relationship. And I could tell something was off because he was treating me like a girlfriend before we were in a relationship. And that's a red flag because I kind of got the sense that he didn't know how to act any other way because he had been in a relationship for so long. He only knew how to be the boyfriend. And I know it doesn't sound like a red flag, but it kind of is because you don't want to be filling in a void for someone. You don't want to be filling in a blank for someone. You want someone to get to know you and choose to treat you that way.
I think you're right. I don't think it's a red flag, but for me, it becomes a red flag. Like, for example, when I go on a first date and, you know, you always have that dance around bringing up exes. And then you're like, well, how long have you been single for? And if I hear anything that's been kind of less than a year, and let's say they were together for quite some time, I don't want to be the placeholder till your feelings finally kick in. And then you realize that like, this is not what you're looking for. You want someone else. Do the work. And then we come back and then we do that. I'm also very curious to learn. You mentioned that Johnny was your 56th first date. So there's a lot of data that you were tracking, right? So what were you paying attention to? And did the data make you date more intentionally? And like, is that something you recommend?
Okay, yes, I do recommend it. I was tracking my whole journey in my notes app and I had an emoji key system to track things like if I felt friend vibes, like that was like a handshake emoji, or if I felt the spark and it was like a little star emoji. You know, like I kind of had different things. But I was mostly tracking and taking notes on how I felt after dates, why I wasn't interested in them anymore if I ended it, like just kind of like seeing what happened. And what I learned was something really interesting. I learned my patterns that would make me turned off prematurely. Like I lean avoidant. So I would find reasons to kind of end things with really solid, great guys. And usually I came from rushing the physical connection. I would rush into sex. We would do it. And then I would become disinterested. And I'm like, wait, okay. If I keep doing this, I'm never going to make an emotional connection with someone. I need to slow down. And without tracking, I wouldn't have learned that pattern. Honestly, when I started my dating journey, I hadn't been single since I was 23. So I was dating like a 23-year-old fully.
Right. You lost that time. So you're like, now I'm single. Like, I feel young again. I want to like, yeah, 100%. I get that. How did the people take it when you would tell them that, hey, I'm just like taking it slow. I want to be more of like a slow burner. Like, did you have any awkward conversations there?
No, there are a lot of different ways to do this. I didn't tell people what I was doing. I showed it through my actions. Like, I just didn't go home with people. Yeah, there was no conversation. I just didn't go to their place after a date. So nothing could happen. So that's just more of my actions. Also, I think it's okay to like make out or be physical, within whatever you're comfortable with. And then if something was getting too heated or was going too far, I would just say, this is as far as I want to go. And that was it. And no one had any problems with that.
Do you think people can date intentionally? Like they're very, very focused on finding their partner, but they're always going home on the first date and they're always having sex right after the first date or 2 dates without getting to have that emotional depth.
If that's something you're always doing pretty much every time with people, I'm assuming you like, I think it'd be really difficult because I don't think you're doomed. There are plenty of people who end up together and they had sex on the first date. It's not like a huge no-no, but I think if it's your pattern and you keep finding yourself single and not with the people you want to be with, it's worth looking into. That's why this is a big experiment. Sometimes you don't know which pattern you need to work on until you actually try to break it and see if anything changes. Sometimes you could break a pattern and nothing changes. So I think it's worth, like, let me try this, let me try that. Like I did a lot of that. Like, let me try, letting them text me first every time. That's like a piece of advice that you hear. That didn't work at all. I'm not going to say you're shooting yourself in the foot on that one, but like you might be worth looking into.
Totally, totally. And I'm sure that there were a lot of pieces of advice that it's like, hey, do this, don't do that. But you kind of had to go through that whole journey and kind of feel like, well, this is what works for me. Let's talk about red flags, right? Because I think it's come up in conversation, or things that like aren't in alignment. And I think a really, really big conversation, just like the money conversation and the kid conversation, I think this conversation is very important in the current state that we're living, right? So just to kind of fill everyone else in that's listening right now, you recently had a post on Instagram and it was how to tell if you're politically aligned in early dating and questions to ask. Before we kind of get into the context of it and like how and what made you post this?
I think honestly, just with everything going on in our country right now, I've posted stuff like this before, by the way. This isn't the first time I ever posted anything on this topic because it has come up several times, in the last few years for obvious reasons. But I think especially in the last few weeks with everything that's been going on, I was like, okay, this is really relevant right now. And I want people to not be afraid to get into the subject really early as messaging on the apps, if some people want to, as early as the first date. I think up until now, the advice is always like, don't talk about politics, like don't talk about these things. And it's like, no, we're changing that now. Like we need to talk about it.
Totally. You could find, well, not the perfect person, but you can think that they're perfect, but if they don't share the same beliefs and values as you, then they're not your person. That's my hot take. What has been like your personal experience with politics influencing dating?
So when I was dating, it was 2021, 2022. And with Biden being president, it didn't come up. Also, I was dating in a pretty liberal city in Seattle. So it wasn't that difficult for me to find people politically aligned with me. That being said, of course, it came up. And being a pretty direct person, I didn't have an issue with being direct about it. And just like, I wasn't gonna just drop a who did you vote for type of question, which by the way, in the comments I post, I just asked who they voted for. That's fine. Like you take whatever approach you want. I was more gonna bring up things that were happening in the news, like topical, that were relevant to the moment, whatever that was. I will say, with my husband, he's extremely political. He is someone I could even see running for an office one day. He is very passionate about this. So it came up pretty early because he cares so much about this stuff. So with him, it was pretty seamless. It's just part of who he is. But I will say in my experience, I didn't have anyone shy away from the topic. And that was pretty promising.
Okay, well, that's good. Politics for me, and when people say I'm not political, that rubs me the wrong way because then I feel like you don't care about things that don't impact you. And that to me is privilege and entitlement. That entitlement and privilege is becoming very, very loud. So it started then, and it was almost it was nice to know what your political stance was, but now it's almost mandatory for me. And I was actually having a conversation with a guy the other day. I was really just off it. Okay. I was not caring about his feelings or anything. He's so why did we stop talking? What went wrong? I'm your choice of podcasts and the way you don't like to talk about politics really gave me the ick. And he's well, I don't really understand what would make you get the ick from that. Joe Rogan doesn't specifically take a stance. I'm listen, are you listening? But even if you have this misconception that he doesn't take a prominent stance, he invites people to his platforms that are very vocal about misogyny, about the imbalance, and about everything that's going on in the world. And then you have people that have explicitly voted for Trump and they believe that whatever he's doing is right. So that's a conversation that I've had to have a lot.
For people listening who are dating, it's okay to be extremely vocal and really stand your ground on these things. Don't go into people pleasing or softening any of that. Just to be liked or to find someone that's not worth it. Like you said earlier, you need to find someone who aligns with your values. That is so important. And more politics and values are overlapping. And I think past generations don't really get that because politics were a little bit more separate. Because it wasn't so I don't know. It just was different 15, 20, 30 years ago.
So, I guess people that are kind of navigating how to have these conversations, what are some practical tips you can give to approach the conversation? And then how do you communicate that? And then also not feel the guilt of, not maybe pursuing a connection that you were very into, but because of this.
Yeah, I think my biggest tip is just remembering on a date, you are there to find out information about them, but you're not there to change them. So if you find something you disagree on, that is extremely important information, but don't turn your date into I need to get into a debate about this. It's not worth your energy. That's not what the date is for. So I would say avoid debating on a date. Change the subject. And if you really aren't into it, you can find a way to get out of the date the earliest time you can. Finish your drink. It's so great talking to you. Don't waste your energy on that. That's my biggest tip. But look for openness. I think that's another look for curiosity and openness. You might not agree on everything, but if they're listening to you and asking questions and they seem interested in talking and having a good back and forth, that's a really good sign. So those are just some two things to keep in mind when talking about this. And just I really don't want people arguing in the DMs and in the messages about these issues. It's just not worth it. That's not what it's for. Save that energy for people you actually care about in your life.
I agree. I think openness and curiosity is important, but I have a very low tolerance for people that is oh, I just I haven't done my research on it or I don't know much about it.
I'm not talking about apathy. I'm not talking about apathy and indifference. It's more because I don't think you can have curiosity and apathy. Can they really mix? I feel a curious person is actually someone who genuinely wants to learn and obviously, and like, you're not there to educate them either, right? You're not doing that labor. But if they can have a back and forth conversation, and if you want, you can be like, you know what? Here's a resource that really helped me and I'll send it to you. That's it. End of conversation. Like,
If they're telling me like, oh, I want to learn more, what I'm saying is my tolerance is low for it. Is I'm not going to sit here and tell you where to go. In today's time, you have ChatGPT, you have all the AI platforms, you have Google. And that to me kind of shows another quality or a trait that I'm not very fond of, is you're not taking initiative.
oh my gosh, you're actually just reminding me of something. Like with Johnny, if I ask any question, like, and I ask lots of questions just out loud to myself all the time. He's Googling it before I even finish my sentence. Like, talking about someone who has initiative and curiosity and like wants to learn. That's the energy.
And the energy is like, I think it goes both ways. Okay. It's like, what value are you bringing to my life that's making it easier? And I feel like this is one way of making things easier for you, because trying to problem solve, right? Like before you kind of even, yeah, no, I definitely think it's very admirable.
But I love it. I love this conversation so much. Like, I think it's so important. And in dating right now, there's a lot of new things that matter now that did not matter in our parents' generation. And we're having to figure it all out.
Yeah. Yeah. What else do you think is important now that wasn't important before?
I think there's a shift in just gender roles. I think there's a huge shift in heterosexual dating and gender roles that we're seeing that is causing a lot of confusion in today's dating world. Like, there are a lot of people out there who expect men and women to act certain ways that don't fit today's culture at all.
And what do you think that is from your perspective? Like, what doesn't fit anymore? What's changing?
Well, I think, especially for women, and I work with women a lot, we have so many more freedoms that we have now, even though those freedoms can be threatened a lot lately. We still have a lot of abilities that we didn't have 30, 40 years ago, where we are not reliant on men the same way past generations of women were. We don't need to be in relationships for survival, for financial survival. So I think that has really caused one of the biggest changes of like, what men provide is different today than it was 50 years ago. And I think we're catching up to that. Now it's more emotional. I want a partner. It's less just go to work, pay for my life, and, you know, be nice to me. Like, that's what it was then. Now it's a lot more complex.
Yeah, we've had this conversation lots of times on the pod, so I won't go into gender roles, but I'm curious to hear, what do you think the reaction is of these changes from men?
So the men who listen to my show, or who are men who actually care about relationships, the reaction has just been like, I really just want to get it right, but I don't know what the rules are. And like, these are men who know about like initiating dates and texting back and being consistent and being respectful and boundaries. And they have the language and the skills for this. But I think they struggle with like, I'm doing everything right, but it still isn't good enough. And I'm still single. And I think, no, with women, it's like, can be the same experience of like, I'm showing up and doing everything right, but I'm still single. So I think my biggest takeaway from what I've been doing is like, everything that women are experiencing, men probably go through as well. And that's where we need to see a little bit more compassion and grace.
I agree. Something I also was thinking about on the topic of things that are changing these days is, I think back in the day, there was more community and there was a village, and everyone was very open to being a villager. But now, because we're constantly paying for convenience and we're optimizing, we lose out some of those things to build better relationships. So my shower thought that I had was, I think love used to be shared back in the day. Like, we had community, we had family, friends, elders, right? And I think now we expect one romantic partner to be our everything, because we kind of don't have some of these other things. So I guess my question is, I feel like I know the answer, but we are expecting romantic partners to meet needs that used to be met by community. And I guess, what does that pressure do to our relationships?
It makes our relationships feel like they're never good enough. Like, that's really what it's doing. I think for a lot of people in early dating right now, it's like, we have fun together, but the conversation, he's not meeting my intellectual needs. We can't talk about the things I like talking about. It's like, okay, you can also talk about the stuff with your friends. all this pressure makes our relationships feel like they're never good enough. And that goes back to your point earlier about constantly looking for the next option and constantly seeing what else is out there. We can't have every need met by one person.
What's another one that's like so real that we're subconsciously doing, but maybe we cut off a good connection because of it?
Okay, here's one that is super vulnerable and real for me. My husband isn't always the best person for me to go to when I am feeling down. Sometimes he's good, sometimes he just doesn't get it right, but my best friend always gets it right. So I'll go to her.
Wait, that's a big one. I feel like he doesn't know how to comfort me or soothe me. And isn't that something that you really
No,
want?
he does know. It's just he's not like 100% success rate on that, you know? And that's okay. I think it's like a 70% success rate. So if I know like I don't have the patience for that, I'll go to my friend.
Okay, got it. So it's okay to get emotional support from your BFF than your partner.
Depending on what it is also, it's like sometimes she understands better than him. And like it's not like he's making it worse. It's like he's doing his best. He loves me so much, but he's not always going to say the perfect thing. Also, my best friend has known me way longer than him. Like,
Yeah. And you know what this is bringing up for me? Even like forget your partner. There are certain best friends that you go because they're just better at comforting you and they just know what to say. Doesn't mean your other really good friend doesn't care about you. So
and that friend isn't like going to get mad that you're going to someone else, or you're not going to be like, oh no, like, is this friend good enough? Because I don't want to go. Like, no, you don't think about it like that.
what else do you think, like one more thing that you think people are getting wrong about dating right now?
Okay, I actually have one big thing right now that I've been thinking about a lot, which is like the fixating and picking apart initiating plans makes me want to tear my hair out. Like I'll get a message from someone being like, he asked me on a date, but he's asking me what I want to do. And it's like, girl, he doesn't mean he can't plan. He just wants to know what you're interested in doing. He's not asking you to do all the labor. He just wants to make sure he gets it right. He doesn't know you. You just met off an app. Like, I get it. You want a guy to come in and be like, 7 o'clock, be ready, wear a dress. Like, I don't know, whatever. Like, no, what if he's just getting to know you? So like, that's what I mean about like, it makes me want to tear my hair out. Or the whole, like, we had a great day. We had an amazing time. But he didn't text me after. It's like, you text him. It's fine. When you're walking down the aisle, you're not going to care who texted who after the date. For the record, I texted Johnny first after every single date. And he still leads a lot in the relationship. I know that's a fear. You're worried about the guy isn't going to lead. It's just a text.
Okay, but I will say I immediately write a man off if he can't plan a date.
Well, okay, but can he not plan a date if he's asking you what you're interested in doing?
But I'm like, don't ask me, just plan it yourself. And like,
I mean, yeah, like I think I understand why, because also in early dating, you don't have a lot to go off of. Like you don't have a lot of touch points for information with someone. So planning is such a huge part of that because that's like a huge aspect. That's like half the equation, right? Of when you're learning about someone. But I think it's like my dating is already so effing hard. It's just like stop getting in your own way and just get to the date. Just meet them in person and figure it out.
so here's my take on it. I think collaboration doesn't need to start on the first date. That's what I'm getting at. I think collaboration can come in later. But for example, you're just starting to talk to someone. Obviously, you're meeting on a dating app. It's fine if you want to ask someone like, hey, do you want to do an activity or do you want to do something more basic? And then you take charge. And this is what I've seen happen. They ask you out on a date and then they won't message you till the day of around like 4 or 5 p.m. The date is at 7. Hey, so like, what's good in your area? What do you want to do? That's where I'm like, hell no.
Oh, I would never accept that. No. No, we're not accepting day of plans. We're not accepting day of plans. Like, I think it's one thing to be like, oh, like I've been on a few spontaneous dates where I was like, oh, I'm going to the farmer's market. Like I'm already doing this and they happen to be going too. Fine. But like, for a date, you want to plan at least 24 hours in advance, a real plan of a place and a time. Okay. Like, yeah, I agree. But then even like with the confirming, it's like, oh my gosh, like people are looking for reasons to not go.
This is good that we're having this discussion because I think people listening maybe think a little bit like me and other people think a little bit like you. And maybe that is where we kind of have a little bit more flexibility and a little bit more understanding, right?
Yeah, you have to understand, I'm coming from a place of like, I've been on 150 dates. like I've planned that many, like I've had that many plans with people. And I'm sure you probably gone on over 100 at this point too in your life. Like I was crazy and counted them for some reason. That is just data like of just whatever is going to be easiest is going to get you to the date, because that's the first. If you can't get to the first date, you're not going to get married.
That's very true. What are you still unlearning about dating?
What I'm unlearning about dating, I would say, I guess I'm trying to learn. Again, I'm almost 4 years out of my dating journey. So, and I'm still talking about dating. So I'm still always trying to remind myself and be in the headspace of how hard it is when you have so many feelings wrapped up in being single and finding someone, and how real all of those feelings are. So I think I'm just really still trying to be connected to that as much as possible as someone who has gone through it, but now I'm on the other side. And I think it's just like really validating how deep all this stuff runs. And I think just figuring out how to keep that, but not let it stop you. Like acknowledge it, validate it, but not let it get in your way.
That's very true. I guess what I want to do now is I do this thing where every guest that comes on leaves a question for my next guest. We had Thomas on the last episode, and we were talking a lot about fulfillment. And he wanted to ask, what fulfills you and why are you fulfilled by it?
Oh gosh, I love this question. Thanks, Thomas. What fulfills me right now is being a villager. We kind of talked about this. I am loving this because I'm stable enough in my life to be there for my community. Like I'm just in a very good place in life where I can just really show up for people. And it's really fulfilling because it just means that like I've done all this work on myself. I've worked so hard to get to where I am. And now other people get to benefit from that. And I love that.
Yeah. And I actually would love to know, you have your own podcast, Dating Intentionally. If someone hasn't heard the podcast before, what episode would you recommend to them recently to like pick up and listen to?
Oh, for sure. So I did an episode in December called Being the Chooser versus Being Chosen. I don't know if that's the exact title, but I will make sure I'll send you the link to it. But it's all about the philosophy behind dating intentionally, really, which is about being the chooser instead of trying to be chosen in your dating life, because it's so much more empowering.
And what question would you leave for my next guest?
Oh gosh, I feel like I wasn't prepared. I guess my question for your next guest that I'd be so curious is like, what would the 10-year-old version of yourself be so proud of you for right now?
I always love this question. I'm sure you can agree to this, but like my 10-year-old self would look at me, she's like, wow, she's so cool. I want to like hang out with her, right? So it's nice to give yourself flowers when you are kind of forced to think about that. Did you want to plug in any of your socials before we wrap up?
Yes, please slide into my DMs on Instagram at dating.intentionally. I love hearing any dating question you have. I'm more than happy to weigh in.
Amazing. And for those of you that are listening, I think my takeaways from today's conversation, realizing that when you're dating people, you often forget what the date was like and how you felt about yourself or how the date made you feel or how that person made you feel. So I think data is a big takeaway for me, and it helps you realize your own patterns. So I would encourage you, and I'm also going to make this a practice for myself, is like journaling and like Talia said, maybe have an emoji, maybe, write a line or two or how it made you feel in the moment. Because what will happen is you might go on the date, you might feel a certain way, forget to document it, and then they run the block and you kind of waste time if you already looked at your notes and being like, yeah, I didn't really feel what I needed to feel and we're not aligned. Well, thank you so much for today's conversation. Really loved having you.
I love this conversation so much. Thank you for getting into it with me.
Thank you everyone for being here for a year of lovely. If this episode gave you language for something you've been carrying, I hope you share it with someone you love. Happy Valentine's Day, and I will see you next week for more lovely. Lovely is an Emma Grantley media production. This episode was produced by Sadia Khan and Shay Yu, written by me, Mahek. Theme music, sound design, and editing by Lou Raskin. Other music is by Epidemic Sound. Tune in next week for more lovely.